Hey, good morning from Kansas City. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, the program where the beat writers and columnists for the Kansas City Star talk Chiefs. And what better week to do it? Super Bowl week has arrived. Thanks for joining us. Join us with your questions and comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can. A couple things before we get started. Herbie Teope not with us today. He's running around, got a lot of things going on today. So we'll catch up with Herbie later in the week. But what an esteemed collection of talented writers we have here today. Sam McDowell got the earbuds in. Good to see you, Sam.
Herbie's on day, Blair.
Okay, very good. Vahe Gregorian dressed up for the occasion. Good to see you, Vahe.
You recognize this sweatshirt, don't you, Blair? 1996 Big 12 championship game.
I got a closet full of similar attire. And Sam Mellinger is here. Sam, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you? This is my nice hoodie.
So I'm glad everybody's got their Super Bowl best this week, and great to see. So, listen. Send us your questions and comments. We'll get to as many of them as we can. I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch today because at the top of the hour, Super Bowl interviews begin. The Tampa Bay Bucks are on the clock starting at 10 a.m. today, and we're going to hopefully join in on those Zoom conference calls. And look what appeared on our screen here. Want to welcome a new sponsor. Happy to have the University of Kansas Health System aboard. You know, when we were going to Chiefs practices, we'd walk right by the office on the way to the interview room. So great to have University of Kansas Health System with us. We're gonna. So guys, let's start with this. I got a question for you, and it just has to do with the week itself. So Tampa Bay Bucks, as we know, first team in Super Bowl history to play in their home stadium. If I understand this right, their training facilities a mile or so from Raymond James Stadium. And the Chiefs will be the first team in Super Bowl history to arrive at the Super Bowl a day before the game, making it a real business trip for the Chiefs. So my question is there an advantage either way? Are the Bucks advantaged by playing in their home stadium? Are the Chiefs advantaged by treating it like a true road game? Sam McDowell, let's start with you. What do you think?
Well, the Chiefs have been really good on the road the past couple of years. So, they went undefeated this year. I don't really anticipate it being all that big of a factor, especially with the 22,000 fans and 7,500 of those are frontline workers. I don't really anticipate there being some big home field advantage in this game. I mean, the Bucks probably, they're seeing the hoop all week. I don't know if that factors in, but they've got a guy who's been here before leading that team. So I think it's a non-factor both ways.
Been here before, this is the 10th time for Tom Brady. That's absolutely a factor. Vahe, what do you think?
Well, I think all the points Sam made are right. And, one of those road wins the Chiefs had was actually in the stadium. And, Blair, you pointed this out earlier in the year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Andy Reid's road record is for coaches who coach more than 100 games, I think is the best in NFL history, and undefeated this year. So, but in seeing Sam Mellinger's face up there, it makes me think about things like the Petty Patrick tour. And I can't you see the Chiefs somehow using this as the world's out to get us. We're the number one seed. We have to play on the road. Some sort of kind of phony, ginned up motivation to help them out, just because they've always got the scan button on for that. So I think it's not really going to be a factor, but it's kind of a point of interest.
Chiefs will find some disrespect, won't they, Sam?
Yeah, I don't think there's been really like a home field advantage for the last 10 months in sports. With there's no fan. Like what are we talking about? But I do have a Petty Patrick Screw You Tour update. Last week, I don't know how many people caught this, but last week I asked Patrick just sort of about that, and if he honestly feels disrespected because he sure makes it seem like that. And did you guys catch his answer? It was next level. He was like, no, like we get tons of respect. You know, I'm respected. We're not disrespected at all. But then we're disrespected. Like it was in the same breath that he was like admitting this is all a farce and then saying, but I'm going to keep doing it. So, I mean, maybe they can, but I don't think there's there is a 0% chance that like Sunday night, if the Chiefs lose, 0% chance we're talking about like home field advantage really got, you know, the Bucks won a home game. Like that's not a thing.
Sam, you
know what?
Think of this thing. Oh, sorry, Sam, real quick. I remember like five quotes from college English, and one of them was this Walt Whitman line about, do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. There's Patrick for you.
Yeah, or the slightly updated version was Rick James on the Chappelle Show. Talking about Eddie Murphy's couch.
Was that the one where he like mocked people for saying that they don't win by enough?
Yeah. He was like, no, we're not disrespected, but we were being disrespected for not winning by enough points, which I didn't know was a stat or something like that. The guy, like, to be clear, like my theory on this is I don't actually think that he's motivated by this stuff because I think he's like ridiculous. He's just different. But I think he just enjoys, like, I think it just makes it more fun to be able to like count the two fingers against the Bills. No idea what he'll do on Sunday if they win, because he can't count like 6 on one hand for Brady and then 2. I don't know what he's going to do, but he'll do something, I'm sure.
Maybe it's the 10 Super Bowls. It just goes right to the 10, back to the 10 thing.
He would give the same hand signal to Tom Brady and Mitchell Trubisky. That would be cool.
Well, you know, those guys all were saying that day that they actually – it was actually refreshing to hear athletes say that they check social media, that they hear – I mean, Chris Jones says he reads everything, which that's probably where we should have posted that Mitch Morse had gone to the Bills and it would have given him an update.
Well, nobody thinks the Chiefs are going to win. That's for sure.
Right.
I mean, they'll have to surpass the odds, and a real Cinderella story here for
That upstart Patrick Mahomes finally find some success.
Hey, I thought that media availability was it last Friday, Thursday, whenever it was. Pretty good for. I think it was Thursday. Chris Jones and Patrick Mahomes both. Didn't you guys get a sense they had their game faces on a little bit? They were kind of ready for this thing.
Yeah, I was struck by Patrick and Andy in particular. I thought Patrick was like, he just has this ability, and you either have it or you don't, of like sort of the moment's not too big for you, and you sort of loosen up. And I think he was already sort of in that headspace, you know, with like everything's on Zoom. It's harder than ever to sort of get inside somebody's head. But I thought he was pretty transparent with that. He was loose. And, you know, that was big stage Patrick, you know, in a way that other people aren't big stage. You know, he was real loose and everything. And I thought Andy Reid was the opposite. You know, even by Andy's standards, he was monotone, and that's him, you know, because he doesn't have time for this. You know, he'll make time, but he'd rather be like drawing up some plays or thinking, you know, it was just, to me, those two guys in particular struck me as just like, God, they are in exactly the headspace that you want them in if you're a Chiefs fan.
Totally great point. I really did feel like Andy, who's been fairly loose, I think, in the last month in ways that I think cumulatively we haven't seen him be that way as frequently for such long periods of times as the last month or so. At least my impression is that. But he was absolute, you know, shutdown corner Andy. You're not getting anything by him and or from him. What's interesting is, as we say this, here it is, traditionally Super Bowl media day, and I guess this day is still a little different than the rest of the week. And all of us will recall last year in Tampa. I mean, you know, he was like a talk show host. I mean, he was holding court at that spot for an hour, and he was even entertaining the guy wearing the Les Josephs and Andy Reid jersey from whatever that punt, pass, and kick thing was. I mean, anything that was brought up, he went with it at that event. I don't know it'll quite translate that way to a Zoom call today.
Right. I thought, Vahe, I think it was to your question, Patrick Mahomes, when he was asked when he became aware of Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I think it looked like it really was sort of the Patrick equivalent of dropping the mic. I mean, I think he said, September 17th, 1995, the day I was born. And I think he actually walked away from the podium at that point.
He did. Yeah, that was it.
I didn't know it was that much of a triumph to say, but it was pretty funny.
Right.
This is pretty remarkable. I looked this up. On September 17th, 1995, Tom Brady was a redshirt freshman. He was a freshman at Michigan.
I looked that up too, thinking
he was already like at one of college football's, biggest programs. Like it just.
But you know what?
It's crazy.
I was actually disappointed because I was hoping it was going to be like he had some big day against a non-conference team his freshman year at Michigan, but no, redshirting. So Patrick was lying.
So Brian LaBerge asks, what offensive line are the Chiefs rolling out? Sam McDowell, you want to take a stab at that? I think I've got an answer, but let's hear it from you.
Yeah, we saw Wiley kicked out to tackle, so I think Rimmers will move over to left tackle. You still have Allegretti, Ryder, and then you'll have Wiley kick out to right tackle to make room for Wisniewski at right guard. That's probably the lineup they'll go with. I thought maybe in that Buffalo game we'd see Rankin because he had a pretty good day in Week 17, but I just think a guy that's only played one game in the last year and a half, the Super Bowl's probably not the second game you want to throw him in, but we've seen linemen go down during these games throughout the season. So I think Rankin will probably be that next guy up. And to me, that's the biggest question going into this game is, can they afford to lose another body? And if they do, how do they shuffle things from here? I think they're sort of at their breaking point right now as far as, throughout the season. I know Andy Heck has several layers deep to this, but, it's plan A. If this guy goes down, then what happens if this guy goes down? I just feel like they're at sort of their bottom layer right now. And if another guy goes down, now what do you do?
Yeah, next man up's never been tested like it has this year when it comes to the offensive line. You think about, last year's Super Bowl and even just last year's Super Bowl with Schwartz and Fisher at tackle and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif at guard. And they haven't had LDT all year. Schwartz for 6 games, and now no Fisher. It is truly a patchwork of an offensive line, and now they're going up against a team that sacked Aaron Rodgers 5 times in the NFC Championship game. So, is that the place where we think the Chiefs might be most vulnerable? Is Chiefs offensive line versus Bucs defensive line?
I think,
absolutely. I mean, beyond that, the Bucs like to blitz a lot, so it's not just going to be those 4 guys against the Chiefs 5. The Bucs bring numbers, and so I do wonder if we're going to see maybe a little bit more of a second tight end, or I don't know, maybe more of leaving the running back home to help. The Chiefs are definitely going to have to think about that and make some adjustments, though.
Yeah, that definitely, and maybe because of this, we see more Darrell Williams than Clyde Edwards-Helaire taking snaps. The running back, just a stronger physical running back that can chip maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, the one thing I keep thinking about is that matchup it jumps out at you, right? Like the Chiefs on their third choice at one tackle and their second choice at the other. This is a third different position that Mike Remmers will start at. Right. He did some time at left guard, then right tackle, now left tackle. But doesn't it seem like in football, when there's a matchup that just screams out like this to us, that, the coaches are smart. It just seems like more times than not, adjustments are made on both sides that sort of the calibration of those matches, it's just not as big of a deal as we think. And now it becomes the second adjustment, right? Like what Sam said about, another tight end. That means fewer options for Mahomes to throw to and fewer threats for the Bucs to cover. It just seems like those things have a way of lessening a little bit. And I still think, I said this last week, but I still think that Saints game is instructive here because that was, I think the Chiefs have a better tackle situation now than they did in that game because Eric Fisher, and this goes back to Sam's point about Andy Heck being kind of at the bottom layer. If they had an option, Eric Fisher was not going to be playing left tackle that day because he was dragging. And the Saints got a ton of pressure. And I think they're actually better in the back end than the Bucs are. But anyway, they got a ton of pressure, and the Chiefs still scored 32 points. So it'll be a problem. But the beauty of the Chiefs is that they have an answer for all the questions on the test. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it.
I do feel like they've time and again shown us that. But I think if there's an asterisk or a thing to be concerned about, it's something our friend of the show, Michael McCambridge, pointed out to me the other day that sort of the Bill James theory in baseball, where if you lose a second baseman, you can make up for it a little bit by cheating some with what you do. But then if you lose a first baseman too, I'm not articulating this properly, but at some point the diminishing aspect of it, catches up with you in a bigger way. And so I feel like they'll be able to make this work, but I fear for them if they sort of lose another link in the chain.
I mean, this was the reason that the 49ers were winning that game last year deep into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Is their defensive line dominated the Chiefs' offensive line. And, Mahomes was sacked 4 times in that game. We all remember him going over to Eric Bieniemy and asking, do we have time to run WASP? And that was because their offensive line was getting beat up. So I think it's a factor. Sam's right. I mean, they have all week to prepare for this. They know what they're up against. They know what their personnel is. But I still think that is the biggest matchup that the Bucs have to look at and say, this is where we can get these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, through 3.5 quarters, the Chiefs had 10 points in the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
And Mahomes was harassed into a couple of picks, and Lyle Harris says, I want the Bucs to blitz every down because Mahomes will get the ball out to his speed guys and they'll be off and running for big plays. Mahomes not going to just sit in the pocket like Rodgers and get sacked. This offensive line is better than what they get credit for. Look, you're absolutely right comparing the advantage of Mahomes over Aaron Rodgers when it comes to mobility. Aaron Rodgers is going to sit here, lament all off season when he should have tucked it and ran on that 3rd and 8 from the goal line when he had nothing but green space between him and the end zone that would have given the Packers an opportunity to tie the game. So Mahomes absolutely takes that and goes into the end zone with it.
I do think it's I don't know if this is what it was Brian with that point, whoever, but Wiley and Remmers are not bums. They're not Fisher and Schwartz. They're not a healthy Fisher and Schwartz, but they're not bums. And I also think that I keep going back to that Saints game. They moved the pocket a lot. The Chiefs did, left and right to help those guys out. I'd expect them to do some of that as well.
Okay, so let me ask you guys this: second straight Super Bowl for the Chiefs. In San Francisco last year, they faced a team that really just dominated the 2 playoff opponents and dominated the regular season. They were 13-3, had a better record than the Chiefs in the regular season. Dominated the Vikings and the Packers in the NFC playoffs. Tampa Bay, pretty impressive, 3 straight road victories to get to the Super Bowl. Their offense is playing great. They're averaging more than 30 points in their last since the Chiefs lost, right, in Week 12. Their offense has been terrific. So my question is, who enters the Super Bowl in a better state? The 49ers last year or the Tampa Bay Bucs this year? And what are some of the differences? What do you think, Vahe?
That's a great question. On one hand, you could say that it's most different for Tampa Bay to be playing a team that's trying to repeat, right? I mean, the Chiefs are a little bit of a known commodity that way. Last season, it was whatever the psychological ramifications are either way, it was 2 teams that hadn't been there for a while. So I don't know what that ends up meaning in terms of advantage. I think, though, we should be seeing 2 teams that both completely believe in themselves. Been a while since Tampa Bay had done anything like this, but between the presence of Brady and other veterans there and the fact that they took the road you just described to get there, I don't think this is a team coming into the game, doubting itself or can we do this? I mean, I would assume Tampa Bay fully expects to win and, find the kryptonite here. So I just think that it's a lot of ways, for all I just rambled on about, I think it's kind of similar. I think two teams that really feel this is their game.
Yeah, I think they're super similar. I think they're built similarly. Like the Bucks don't have anybody as good as Bosa, but they're built similarly. I think on both sides of the ball. To me, the difference is I know this is oversimplifying, but to me, the difference is the quarterback. Like, Brady's not going to miss the equivalent of Emmanuel Sanders deep the way that Garoppolo did. So if that's the tiebreaker, I'd say the Bucks are maybe a little bit better.
But Garoppolo didn't throw 3 interceptions on 3 straight possessions either, which he did against the Packers. And through, I know, didn't Tyrann Mathieu pick him off in Tampa Bay? Seems like the Chiefs have 1 or 2 picks in that game in the regular season.
On a deflected, if I remember, it was kind of a deep pass and it bounced off. Maybe Breeland deflected it or something.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
And with the Brady Slayer as the defensive coordinator, that's an interesting X factor in this, I think, too. Just the sense Spagnuolo seems to have had of Brady over the years. I don't know what the full record is, but he's had some very notable wins that he engineered.
For sure. The bigger difference when I think about the opponent, maybe what's the difference in the Chiefs, right? The Chiefs had never been there before. None of the players had the Super Bowl experience. How much should we factor in having been there, done that for the Chiefs? And we talked earlier about advantage or disadvantage, playing basically a true road game. Chiefs treating it as such, not leaving Kansas City until Saturday to go down there, but just the fact that they have Super Bowl experience and will not be nothing, not only Super Bowl experience, but the experience of beating this team in this stadium already this year. I just don't think from any sort of intangible standpoint, the Chiefs are disadvantaged as opposed to where they were a year ago. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, and I also think, just adding to that, things didn't go well for this team the last time they were here for 3 quarters, and they still won the football game. I think that stuff matters too, because there's going to be moments in this game that seem pretty big and moments that could potentially get a lot of teams down. And this team's been in that position before and bounced back. And they did that in the last year's playoffs. They've already done it this year, once in the playoffs. I just think this is a game that lends itself to panic, and this is a team that's not going to panic.
Yeah. One thing I don't think they're not going to talk about this like on the national coverage or whatever, but like the defense is interesting to me. Like depending on how much juice Frank Clark has for this game, I think the Chiefs defense may be a little bit ahead of where it was last year. Now look, this defense did not have the length of track record that last year's did, but I think Juan Thornhill makes a huge difference. He was absolutely terrific against the Bills. And if that's where he's at physically, that's a huge upgrade at an important position. Because, Matthew and Thornhill, there can't be too many pairs of safeties better than that in the league. And especially against, a team with that quarterback and then, Godwin and Evans and Miller, like all Gronkowski, I think that can play a big role.
How about 10 starters are expected to start for the Chiefs in Super Bowl 55 that started in Super Bowl 54. The only player not in the lineup is Reggie Ragland, who started last year's game, and L'Jarius Sneed will start in this one. So I think that's interesting. All right, let's wind it down and address the important topic that Jesse Bates brought up. I know the big story here is the Super Bowl, but can we please briefly address the Twitter thread about Mellinger's writing style?
Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
I don't know that this has ever happened to me before. Have you guys ever had this where like somebody describes you or something that you do in a way that you had no idea that you did, but as soon as you hear it described, you're like, oh my God, that's perfect. I absolutely like. I never realized that this is my thing, but as soon as I read what McDowell said, I was like, yeah. I guess we do that.
I tell you what, we've been in a lot of different situations, hair on fire for most people, and Cool Hand Sam is just typing away. I sort of have a visual of him like in the Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise hanging down, right, his face right below the floor, and Sam's just casually typing the story that he wanted to get out. Then he looks up like, oh, look where I am. Pretty amazing.
It's just funny to me because the final product, I feel like, turns out well for both of our columnists. But sitting between those two guys, and Vahe is often, I don't know how I'm going to put this together, and then it works. And Sam's just over there typing, and like I said in the tweet, his hands never stop moving. Every once in a while, he'll look up for just a second, and then he's right back to it. And it's just, for those of us that have to go through and sometimes think about what's my next sentence, it's really irritating to watch.
The look up is so perfect. That look up tilt.
That's the part that killed me. Well, that was from Therese, right?
I mean, that's like 3 seconds tops. So I mean, it's just like, yeah, that's what I want to say. I'm good.
Yeah. And then you mentioned the head tilt. My wife makes fun of me for my head tilt all the time.
Sam, I actually wondered if because you mentioned that you hadn't noticed it, I actually wondered if you went to Katie and were like, do I do this? And she'd be like, yes, you do.
No, as soon as I read the words, I was like, oh, I won't say the word, but I was like, they got me.
It's sort of that Forrest Gump head tilt too, isn't it? Vahe mentioned the story. We were in the car traveling from Milwaukee to Green Bay, and you were furiously putting together I think it was the minutes, Bellinger minutes that day, and you didn't come up for air. I remember that. What I also remember, and Vahe didn't mention this in the tweet, that the radio was blasting the entire way.
And the rest of us were singing. We were singing along.
The Kramer reference was A+ though, Vahe. That made the tweet.
All right, so if you haven't seen it, go find this Twitter thread and get some writing tips from Sam Bellinger.
How'd you read it, Blair?
What's that?
How'd you read the Twitter thread?
Oh, yeah. How about that? It was a miracle. It was a Twitter miracle. It only took 1,000 phone calls and
you're back.
Yeah, so Twitter's back. While I was gone for a week, I'd gotten my Twitter account was hacked, and apparently through my Twitter account, a lot of people bought Bitcoin. I found out.
It's good to know you have that kind of sway.
All right, guys, let's end it here. Tampa Bay Bucks are on the clock with their Zoom calls. I want to thank Sam, and of course Herb will be joining us on Thursday when we return. I want to thank the University of Kansas Health System for their sponsorship, and mostly thanks to you all for joining us. And if we didn't get to your question or comment, we'll try to do that on Thursday. So for all of us and Beth Welsh, our producer, have a good morning, and we'll talk to you again on Thursday, 9:30 in the morning.